Hello and welcome to Ratio Dialogue with me, Jonas Gravström. Today we are having a conversation with Dan Klein, Professor of Economics at George Mason University. And we will talk about his latest paper in Is It Just to Pursue Honest Income, where he dwells into Adam Smith's work about honest income. Dan Klein, welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
I think you have been here 2 times already, so you're our most pristine guest. So what would you say is honest income?
By honest income, I mean, first of all, income, something like, or maybe net income, earnings, wages, salary, profits, money, honest. That's the important word here. And the first aspect is just that you're not messing with other people's stuff to get it. Also, that you're not misleading people. You're showing common decency. Also, let's put to the side income earned in activities where there's heavy involvement with the government. For example, selling things to the government.
Yeah.
Not because I want to presume something different about the government. I work for the government.
So that, to some extent, 10% roughly.
Right. So I'm not condemning that, but let's focus on private enterprise, income honestly earned, received. That's honest income.
Okay. And in the paper, I found a line really interesting. So why the green light to honest income is itself complicated.
Yes. So
What did that mean? It was
the paper is about defending a green light for the pursuit of honest income. But it's a qualified green light. First of all, it's on the road to honest income, naturally. But there's a number of other things about it. If you're earning your honest income by providing pernicious goods and services of some kind, well, that's something to consider. And by pernicious goods and services, we could be talking about cultural products, discourse, ideas. I think there's a lot of money to be made in pandering to bad ideas. It could be substances and activities that are honest, but not good, perhaps. So it's a hard thing to call. So there's that. And sometimes there are real externalities involved. Sometimes you can make more honest income by opportunism, nickel and diming people in special circumstances. And it's honest, but it's still perhaps not becoming. Bear in mind that $1 means more to a poor person than it does to a rich person. So there might be more profits to be made in serving rich, but it's maybe something to think about, because $1 does mean more to a poor person than it does to a rich person. And when you have a good or service with benefits that are easily shared, non-rival risks, or low marginal cost, in some cases, I think it's becoming to not charge as much as you can, perhaps. So it's not always the right thing or just, but by and large, I want to argue, and I think Adam Smith is arguing, that honest income, by and large, is presumptively just. There's a presumptive justness. And when I say presumptive, what I mean is it's like the presumption of innocence. We don't know that the defendant is innocent, but we presume. And the prosecution bears the burden of proof, of proving otherwise. And it's the same thing with someone pursuing honest income. There should be a presumption that it's just, even praiseworthy to some extent. But of course, there could be special circumstances and grounds for saying otherwise. But that burden of proof is on the other party. Basically, honest income is to the good.
Yeah, so one example would be then that when you and me are out speaking most times I would presume that neither you nor me can charge the maximum amount of money we can do. Most times I think at least I speak for free. especially if it's for for a student organization, but maybe from a really big firm, I would charge the money.
Yes, something like that could be very pertinent. That it's not worth doing, especially. Yeah, well, yes, I agree with that. Yeah, and by the way, let me note that this justness issue is about your use of time, energy, efforts. Once you make honest income, what you do with it is another matter.
Yeah.
It's not what we're focusing on today. I don't think that what you do with the income is entirely separable from the issue of the justness of making more money, but by and large, you can kind of focus on them separately.
Yeah, I think so. Indeed. Another interesting line is it says, like, why do the vast majority of people spend the vast majority of their lives longing for pursuing income or wealth?
Well, I think a lot of people do. I don't know if maybe you're overstating it a little bit, but first of all, if Adam Smith is right and people understand that, they might feel quite comfortable morally with focusing on honest income, pursuing honest income. If there's a good argument, and I think there is, this is what the paper is about, for saying that the pursuit of honest income serves the good of the whole.
Yeah.
Universal benevolence, you might say, serving universal benevolence, then people might pursue that partly because their other signals are not as reliable. So they might figure, well, this is good. I did my hard day's work. I did my contribution, and I'm not really sure what else to do. I mean, there's other things to do in your life around with your family and friends, your neighborhood, but sometimes it's hard to develop that as an ongoing activity, with a routine and with a development of ability and skill and relational knowledge. So, of course, other people pursue income for not so virtuous reasons, and without the same spirit about it serving universal benevolence, or maybe even awareness. And I'm talking about honest income. Yeah. So it's varied.
Yes, indeed. So another quote, and here I think it's about you discussing Smith, and doing nothing is not a good thing, because then as long we could say that when people pursue honest income, they do something, and
yes,
and some would argue honest income is not good, but then kind of the counter argument, doing nothing is not praiseworthy either. So you have here an example with Jim. So heeding Dr. Jones, Jim understands himself innocent, but innocence hardly make becoming. Innocence may be preserved by sitting still and doing nothing. Page 82, a far cry from praiseworthiness.
That's right. Samuel Johnson said that there's hardly any business more harmless or activity more harmless than pursuing wealth, making money. He said it's innocent. So, he was sort of saying, don't get too angry at people. They could be doing much worse things. But mere innocence, Smith would say, is not the same thing as praiseworthiness. And I'm arguing that there is a presumptive praiseworthiness. Not only is it innocent, we're assuming that because we're calling it honest, right? So it's innocent. But is it even praiseworthy? And there's good arguments in this book and in his other great book that yes, indeed, there's actually virtue in it, and it's worth knowing that virtue, and it's worth learning the service to universal benevolence, because then you can pursue it in a more enlightened and virtuous manner. Yeah.
But if I would think that you maybe are an oil driller, and my preference would be that you stop doing this honest income thing. How should we see that if we have kind of different opinions of what the honest, good actions are?
Yeah. Well, that gets into one of those caveats, perhaps, about externalities and whether or not, oil production and oil usage generates a real systemic negative effect, and what the alternatives are, and whether those actually produce less of such negative effects. And debates to be had there. Those get into big issues, and we have our different attitudes about those particular issues.
Yeah, but it could be me going into the government and being a very good bureaucrat writing a lot of long laws. Could also be maybe something.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't approve of either as an honest income, but it's a matter of judgment, I guess.
Yes.
Can you tell us about Sabrina? It's a movie from 1954.
Yeah, so, Smith develops the argument that free enterprise leads to social benefits, generally speaking. And he develops very nice argumentation about this. And so market signals emerge like profit and loss coming from the price system. And so these are certain signals for serving universal benevolence, okay? And in this film, Sabrina, there is a main character played by Humphrey Bogart who is an industrialist. And there's a scene where his brother doesn't get it. His brother's more of a playboy type, played by William Holden, and says, why do you devote yourself to this? Like, you're rich, you already have all the money you could possibly use. Like, what are you working so hard for, brother? Like, you're not enjoying your wealth, as far as I can tell. So is Humphrey Bogart, using his effort, time, and attention justly, and he makes a case that he is. Yeah. And so there's the movie clip.
We can play the movie clip.
This is my home. No wife would ever understand it.
Well, neither can I. You've got all the money in the world.
Well, what's money got to do with it? If making money were all there was to business, it's hardly be worthwhile going to the office. Money is a byproduct.
But what's the main objective? Power?
That's become a dirty word.
Well, then what's the urge? You're going into plastics now. What will that prove?
Prove? Nothing much. A new product has been found, something of use to the world. So a new industry moves into an undeveloped area. Factories go up, machines are brought in, a harbor is dug, and you're in business. It's purely coincidental, of course, that people who never saw a dime before suddenly have $1. And barefooted kids wear shoes and have their teeth fixed and their faces washed. What's wrong with the kind of an urge that gives people libraries, hospitals, baseball diamonds, and movies on a Saturday night?
Yeah, so in the movie clip, he explains that by virtue of pursuing the returns in the market, it happens that now barefoot kids wear shoes and all these other benefits come. That's not a byproduct or an accident. It's essential to why it's profitable. Okay? So it's the other side of the coin of the returns, the honest income to be had in investing in that or whatever. And in fact, the expected or hoped for rates of return, in a way, signal what better to invest in. So in my paper, I say, like he says he's going into plastics.
Yeah.
So suppose he thinks he can make 15% there, whereas in textiles, 10%. Yeah. So which should he do? Well, is it just like for his own personal benefit that he chooses plastics with 15%? No, the 15% actually suggests a greater service to universal benevolence, because that 15% flows from people ready to plunk down their own money for the goods in those markets. And so he understands that, the character in the movie. So he represents to me a kind of enlightened pursuer of honest income. It's like as if he's read Smith.
Yeah. Maybe I assume so. Someone else who read Smith is former President Obama. So in one of Obama's speeches, he's quoting Smith, maybe more than one. But so I want to hear your take on it.
Mm-hmm.
So Obama says, it was Adam Smith, the father of free market economics, who once say, quote, "They who feed, clothe and lodge the whole body of the people should have such a share of the produce of their own labor as to be themselves tolerably well fed, clothed and lodged."
Yeah, Smith cared about everybody, including the poor. He was somewhat revolutionary. It's not that it was unheard of, but he led the way of overcoming a kind of negative attitude towards the poor, and in fact promoted a kind of equality of morality, a kind of equal dignity, equal standing, equal counting in universal benevolence. It's not that these rich guys count more to the universal beholder, the benevolent universal beholder. Everyone counts equally in this beholder's eyes, just as in benevolent monotheism. And he was saying they should earn what they contribute. They too should benefit from their great efforts and contributions. And his advice, this is something which Obama probably didn't mention, was free markets. In almost no cases did in these connections did Smith make exceptions to that basic policy in the Wealth of Nations. So he was saying everyone counts equally, including the poor, and they too should be free in free markets, which is probably the part that Obama didn't quite elaborate.
Oh, maybe. So if sometimes honest income is over-pursued, people neglect other sides of life. Can you explain?
Yes, indeed. Again, it's only presumptively just, and there are other uses of his time, attention, efforts that our man Jim, say, could be doing. And if he's neglecting other duties to serve other people around him, people he's connected to, his family, his friends, his community, and so on, that's not virtuous. I mean, you can be obsessed. You can fetishize your career. You can be too absorbed. Even though you're making, let's say, good, honest income and doing all the good that comes with that, it can be outweighed by being a bad father, being a bad brother, being a bad husband, being a bad, And so, sure, absolutely.
A last one, so which I found interesting, the writing of Smith. So, where Smith warns for a sympathy for the rich rather than poor. And it's a little bit longer quote, I will read it. "The rich man glories in his riches because ... they naturally draw upon him the attention of the world, while the poor man goes out and comes in unheeded, and when in the midst of a crowd is in the same obscurity as if shut up in his own hummel."
Yeah, that's right. The rich celebrities are focal socially for first of all for their wealth, because it's one way of saying, hey, who are we going to kind of focus on and have the common experience of thinking about how that person lives and what that person does, and follow the soap opera in the newspaper about that person's getting married or getting divorced, or so being most wealthy is a kind of salience which makes those people focal. Of course, also their great wealth gives them experiences in life, beautiful homes and trips and maybe yachts, which are interesting to project yourself into and maybe pleasant because you kind of sympathize with the experience of being on such a lovely yacht or boat or home or trip. So those people just tend to, and in Smith's day, wealth much more closely tracked political power. Got to remember.
Yeah.
Because it was more of an aristocracy, of course. And so the rich was kind of another way of saying the powerful. And I think it's just in our nature, in our genes, to be quite interested and wanting to ingratiate ourselves with the powerful. Like when we were in the hunter-gatherer band, you didn't want to be on the bad side of the leaders of the band.
No.
So we all kind of like take a special interest in the powerful.
Indeed. Well, thank you very much for being part of Russia Dialogue. It's been a pleasure as always.
Thank you, Jonas.
And thank you for listening or watching.